from school. So that's one of the things we also had to consider inside of the redistricting journey. And right now we have K-6 kids riding together and 7 through 12 students riding together. We would like to see that, and maybe even get to a place where we'd have another tier where maybe the middle school kids ride by themselves to and from school. And that's one of the possibilities as we travel forward. So where are those new homes and new neighbors? Well, we're looking at a variety of them. Actually, the one that is just coming on, we're seeing that across from Needham and Webb, a developer bought most of the homes at Hillview, and that's going to be a new subdivision as well. And then we have, the bluffs at Youngs Creek. We have growth inside of Oakley Flame and Simon Farms. And then up by Brannigan, right by the high school, we're seeing prospective homes go in. And that's going to cause some significant opportunities for us, but also probably some pain as we try to get kids to their home school the best as we can. And so that precipitated us to have this conversation. Since our last meeting, I did reach out to a demographer that did our study in 2016 and looked at potential growth in our community. And I've asked for them to review our study. And they are going to do that. And by the end of the first quarter, late March or early April, they'll submit that data back to us to look at what did they see the next 10 years looking like for our student populations, especially in that group of K to 4. And so we'll be able to get a better handle on some of that information. And so we now head into what's our present reality. Well, the color codes tell us our present reality of on the far left of the screen that you see, that's Union, except there's a little subdivision up there by the corner of 144 and 35 where some of those kids are carved out for some reason. Historically, they went to Creekside, and then Creekside's there in the middle in the green, except for the top north center. That's Northwood, and those kids go to Webb Elementary. Once again, it was a historical decision made when they redistricted back in the 90s. In the heart in the middle, in that red area, is Northwood Elementary, and it takes and down by Banta up to Commerce Drive, and then behind Big Lots and the old Kroger store. And then on the far right side is Needham Elementary, and it runs, from north to south, and then also to the Shelby County line. So that's what we look like right now. And we need to, like I said, to make some balancing decisions to help us with Essa and that. And so since we last met, I've asked Matt, who is the maestro on creating these maps, to come up with some ideas based on some parameters that allow us to do that. And so Matt is going to walk us through the 6 models that we've are about to share. But then, like I said, please note that these are just for us to examine, and none of them is perfect. And we are going to pick your brains to make them perfect, or go back to drawing boards and continue to provide the best environment. So Matt.
Very good. Once again, my name is Matt Sprout. I'm the Director of Technology, and working along with the central office team and a lot of input, we came up with a number of options. All of them come from an application called 5 Maps, and part of that 5 Maps application, we upload all our student demographics, so locations, addresses, names, all that stuff, so that we can realistically apply boundaries and say, okay, what works? You will notice that the options are lettered, option A, option B. There are letters missing. Everybody, when they create something, there's bad ideas. So the letters that are missing were bad ideas. So we'll just stick with the letters that are there. But if you notice that the letters are out of order, that's on purpose. As we work through this, the background that Dr. Clendenning had mentioned earlier will stay in effect. But this is kind of a high flyover, right? We're not getting down to the granular what student lives where. This is a proximity of the line, and will give us the ability to kind of categorize areas and associate it to schools. You'll notice throughout this, Dr. Clendenning mentioned Essa. Union will always be the Western District. You'll notice that they kind of ease into Creekside a bit. And so that is on, will stay the same options. The other ones will change and signify northwest, northeast, southwest, and southeast. But it's always important, like Dr. Clendenning said, this is just a talking point. There is not one of these that is spot on. So this is just an opportunity to put in front of you so that we can get feedback and fine tune the process. As you look through this, you're going to see Union, we've got to get more kids there. Although they're the smallest school, we've got to get some kids there. Creekside's our biggest school, right? So as we work through this, we got to kind of keep that in mind also. So option A, this is option A. You'll notice that Union stays there. We meet Essa with that. As you look through the numbers, you'll notice that we maximize Webb. So when we look at Webb and we say, hey, they are pretty full, you'll notice that. And that's one of the advantages of option A. At the same time, we minimize Creekside. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? It's something we will discuss here in a bit. As Dr. Clendenning mentioned, we're going to do 2 breakout groups, and you'll be able to provide feedback on all of these options. You'll also know that we are, on this option, have a balanced free and reduce. When I say balanced free and reduce, Union's always going to be low, just by the demographics in the area that they're the western part of our school district. So when I say balanced, Union's going to remain consistently low. In this options, you'll notice the red lines. There's significant changes for each school. As we kind of talked about this, Northwood is the northwest portion of that. So skip Union. So Northwood would be the top left. Needham would be the top right, or the northeast. Webb is really expanding its boundaries in the southeast. And then Creekside's kind of diminished their boundaries in the southwest. All right, option B. Option B, you'll notice move the lines a bit. Creekside moves a little farther east. Webb doesn't have as much territory. Needham stays about the same, and Northwood gains some more territory. Union, once again, doesn't change. What these lines do for us is it minimizes Creekside and Webb. So if the feedback we get is we need some room on the west side and we need some room on the east side in those schools, this might be an option that we want to look at. At the same time, it maximizes Northwood. And once again, we have a balanced free and reduce rate, but there's still significant changes to each of the schools. Option C. So this is sad to say, or I'm sorry, option D. Notice that C is missing, right? Option D. I almost three-lettered these for you, but you know, option D. One of the things you'll want to notice here right off the bat is that free and reduce isn't balanced anymore, and there's still some significant changes. In each of these options, you'll notice that Northwood is pulled into the different territories, and I believe in 4 of these 6 options, Northwood goes to Northwood. But in option D, the free and reduce isn't balanced. WinStar now looks at going to Webb is a significant change, and then the Bluffs at Young Creek would go to Creekside. So option F, notice the highlight in the table. We don't really meet Essa on this one. Dr. Clendenning noted, we're getting neighborhoods where we haven't had neighborhoods before. We are a growing school district. So do we want to create that opportunity? Obviously, if we look at this one, we're not going to meet one of our goals of an Essa balance. Option F minimizes Needham and Webb students that go there, the quantity of students. So if this is one of the things that is important to our community, we would be able to do that. Free and reduced isn't balanced, but what is nice about this option is it's about as close as we can get and not changing the borders much for the given schools. You'll notice Northwood doesn't change at all. Webb gets a little bit out of the north from Needham, and then Creekside decreases towards Union. So this is a one option where there's minimal impact on the different schools. So option H. Option H, once again, we don't really meet Essa. The goal of this is the primary neighborhoods really don't change much. You'll notice that there's still some close to the current borders that we have right now, but Webb gains a lot of territory where they didn't before, and that could be great. Isn't really balanced, but it does minimize Needham, room at Needham. Option I minimizes Northwood. If you look at the Northwood territory right in the middle at the red, you can see why it would minimize Northwood. Northwood's drastically affected on this, but what is great about that is it minimizes the space at Northwood. Our free and reduced is still balanced, and once again, this would be some major changes for each of our schools across the district. So those are the 6 options, and you can tell right offhand, it was kind of just leaving Union, expanding it to the east a bit, and then playing with the lines in between to try to keep that free and reduced balanced in addition to Essa. Thanks for everybody on the team. Once again, these are talking templates. There is no great plan here, but just different opportunities, advantages, and disadvantages that we'll break out in a moment. Back to you, Dr. Clendenning.
All right.
Dr. Clendenning, real quick, we talked a little bit about Essa, and Barb had a quick question. What are the implications for not meeting Essa requirements?
They in theory, they could take our federal dollars away, and that would include the free and reduced lunch money that we get. So that's the implication. And that's why we need to try to balance it. They could penalize us with withholding dollars. All right. A couple other things just real quickly. I'm going to stop sharing so I can come back to everybody. We are going to do breakout rooms, and Robin's going to help us assign those. Breakout rooms are going to be 2 groups. Dr. Warland and Mr. Sprout are going to be in one group, and then Mr. Sewell and I are going to be in the other group, and then the rest are going to be randomly selected by Google. And what we're going to do is just kind of walk through those different options that Matt detailed for us. A couple things to remember. One, no perfect. We really probably need Creekside to continue to be the largest school. I'll just tell you up front, one of the modeling, because it has the most capacity of all of us. When you go back to that, and we know there were some that we changed and did, and it became much smaller. And we need to continue to examine that. The Essa numbers, let me just tell you, those were our best estimates, because what we didn't do is, like, if we moved, like, we give Webb more teachers. Well, we didn't change that denominator by the number of teachers and multiply that. So when you see some red, don't worry so much about that today, because if you see something about a Webb boundary you like, go ahead and tell us that, and then we'll run some hypothetical models with staffing changes, etc., as we move forward with this journey. Are there any other questions before you do the breakout rooms? All right. We're going to spend also in breakout rooms, everybody knows we're going to spend about 5 minutes on each of the models, just so that we can get through. If there's something that happens after tonight's meeting, you think, oh, I've got an idea that I want to share that I didn't get a chance to share, please send those in to us. We will we'll continue to gather all inputs, and these will be public. And we want people to tell us what they like and don't like. So that's where we're headed. Matt will drive his own modeling, forecast 5, and I will drive mine as we go to breakout rooms. And Matt, I have about 6:55. So right now we'll plan to come back at 7:30. So it'll be a little bit more than 5 minutes each one. But at 7:30, we'll come back and reconvene as a large group to debrief and go to next steps. And we should all be back. I want to thank everyone for their participation and dialogue. And now we're going to hear from both sides. We're going to start with Dr. Warland's group on option A. What did you like? What opportunities did you see? And then Mr. Sewell will report out to breakout room, my breakout room, option A. So Dr. Worland.
Yes. Wow, time flies, doesn't it? So thanks, everybody. Great discussion. I would say some of the positive comments on option A, just overall, I'm picking out highlights, really focused a lot. This group liked the data. So we focused a lot on free and reduced balance. And I will say that theme is consistent across all the options. The group likes to see balance at those 4 larger schools in free and reduced. And so this option covers that. This option allows for growth at Creekside, so that's a positive, but also on the flip side, as you mentioned earlier, Dr. Clendenning, we do need to look at making sure we have a reasonable enrollment at Creekside. So although it allowed for growth, at the same time, we need to be mindful of being too low in that building. The other concern was that if Webb needed space for growth, there was really little room at Webb because Webb is maximized in that option. So those are the highlights.
All right, thank you. Mr. Sewell.
I think our group echoed that most of those same sentiments. A couple of the other pros it brings Northwood closer to its home school because Northwood would come to Northwood. It keeps heritage together, keeps Paris Estates in. This was the option that was our top vote getter for favorite options. On the cons, Northwood loses a lot of its identity and its neighborhood. It takes walking as an option off the table for that school. And somebody commented long bus rides, perhaps in many schools. So those were our top thoughts on option A.
All right. Thank you very much. Option B, back to Dr. Worland's group.
Yes. Option B, I'll start with concerns. One of the concerns is that, I don't know if concerns is the right word, but a comment that was made is that Northwood is in an area right now, kind of a district or a location that's landlocked. And so it might be okay to have the capacity at that building a little higher because we may not see as much growth in Northwood. There was some conversation about where the growth might happen across the district. Northwood may not be the school that sees some of the new growth. And so had a conversation around that. But we also talked about 84% being a little high. There was a conversation about, can we try to keep all of those capacities maybe in that 70 to 80 range that Creekside's pretty high right now at 91. And some of the parents thought that if we could kind of keep that down around below that 80 range, that was better. Again, spent a lot of time in the data.
Thank you. Mr. Sewell.
We echoed some of those same comments, Northwood being too big, no room for growth. Another comment was it changes Creekside's district in a way that makes transportation a stretch, maybe longer bus rides. Crossing 31 is an example of where that takes place. But this was one of our top 3 favorites for our group. And we also liked the balanced free and reduced. This was one of the options I think we said could be tweaked and maybe made serviceable by moving some students around to maybe bring that Northwood population down a bit.
All right, thank you. Option D, back to Dr. Worland.
One of our key positives about this particular one is that unlike some of the others that allowed us to keep the students who wanted to walk to Northwood from their communities near the school, that was one of the positives that the group liked. Some of the concerns was one we talked about earlier, that there are students, for example, who are near Webb and can see Webb from their backyard, but they're not attending Webb. So some of that prior conversation just about a location of schools. The conversation around Windstar and Youngs Creek being on that west side of 31 and Windstar traveling to Webb, a little conversation just about travel and possible confusion inside Windstar and Bluffs at Young Creek. However, we did talk about that this is an option that has been reviewed by transportation, and we think that that's viable there. Some concern about the high free and reduced rate at Northwood. So that unbalance, again, the group was really targeted more balanced across those 4 larger buildings. And again, that capacity at Northwood, and the fact that we may not see a lot of new growth right immediately around Northwood.
Our group tracked most of those same comments. One observation that was made during that group was that on the east side of the corporation, 44 as a divider line makes sense as a good reference line or a boundary line. But other than that, this was not one of our top choices, and all of our discussion was very similar to what Dr. Warland just said.
F.
On the positive side, capacity seems to be good. We're just a little low at Needham and Webb. Free and reduced, again, is a little bit more balanced. I think I have that right in this one. Just there was a mention about the Essa number, if that's a concern. Again, and I think we've talked about that we're going to go back and refine those numbers as well. But there was a conversation about making sure that we attend to the goals that we've established for the process. So wanted to note that. And again, that free and reduced is not balanced as much as we would like, but it's better than it is in some of the others.
We didn't have a lot of strong points on this one. One of the big pros was it's probably the fewest big changes to the existing districts. This one does cause Heritage to be divided in half, and we said that is not something we really like to do. And other than that, it's the concern with Essa that Dr. Warland mentioned.
H.
This is the one I think Matt can correct me if I'm wrong, but we spent a lot of time just kind of looking at and thinking about. One of the positive comments, it could be a positive, is that if one of the goals is little disruption, this one has little change. The concerns, again, Essa was mentioned, free and reduced is not balanced. That was mentioned as well. We had some conversation about travel time, but I think we worked through that one. So that's H.
All right.
I don't really have anything to add. That tracked our points exactly.
And I.
One of the positive comments, probably the key thing made, was that this one seems to meet many of the goals. A concern is that Northwood's capacity seemed a little low. As we had, a couple things I just want to mention as we had these conversations is that there was a conversation about disruption. And, the point was made that obviously as little disruption as possible is preferred. However, if we're going to do the work, we want to do the work so that it meets our goals and that the work counts and that it matters. So I thought that was a good point. We also talked about a need for a plan for interdistrict transfer requests. So I wanted to make sure I added those in there as well with that for the last one.
So this was one of our top 3 options. The meeting the objectives of balancing free and reduced in Essa was very good. The boundary lines were noted as being clean and logical in terms of the natural landmarks that they follow. Keeps most neighborhoods together. The biggest concern we noted, Dr. Wolin also mentioned, was Northwood really kind of loses its identity. It becomes just a very small piece of its original district, and the school itself doesn't sit in the district. So that was our comments on that one.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for your participation and input. steps and kind of where we're headed. We're going to take all the comments back and recreate the maps based on strengths and weaknesses. Matt or Brooke, did you guys get to rank yours at all?
We did not go to that effort.
Okay. So we may get that out as a poll to this group again, so you guys can weigh in. One of the things, though, that I want to talk now about is kind of the timeline and the journey that we're on. Obviously, a couple of things as we embarked on this strategic task force, and that was to really create a great plan for Franklin schools. And then COVID hit, and then we've had other things to come into play, and COVID hit and continues to cause a little stress here and there. We're amazingly red right now in the virus. It's very active. And it's causing some stress for us. We can't get together and have some really good conversations. Today was good, but it could be better. So one of the things that I talked to our board president today, I talked to the central office team, was that timeline journey. And I want to just throw something out to everybody is that if we cannot come to a meeting where we can all be together and see the maps up close, because like Laura said, can next meeting, can we see that some of these boundary streets? Because it helps to see those, because like you get a sense of what are we talking about. They do look clean, but it maybe doesn't make sense as we get closer to that. If we can't get together and be socially distant and still be safe, etc., would it be prudent for us to push off the date of the district to August of 22 and not August of 21 to allow us a couple things? One, enrollment opportunities. Right now, if this were the new norm for us, our buildings are actually okay. I'll just tell you that right now. We would meet our dynamics and everything would be at play. I don't think that's going to be the case. We're going to see normal come back and kids are going to come back to our buildings. But if we did allow that to take place to August of 22, we would then have the next 6 months to get to the new ADM of September and do some of those things. Also, the vaccine is here. I mean, we're starting, I know you guys probably have friends and neighbors that are in the medical field or getting the opportunity to get the shot. Soon, we're one day closer to this pandemic ending, and that would allow us time to get together and have a more tangible aspect of redistricting. I don't want someone to think that we ramrodded this thing through just to hit a big checkbox to say you had to get it done. Because that's not what the board's telling me. The board's telling me do it right. Yes, we want some finality, but let's do it right. And we are committed to engaging the community in the dialogue about what's best for our journey. So I want to throw that out to everybody to see kind of how you react to those words. I know I've talked to Dr. Worland a lot this afternoon about that. What do you all think as you hear that as a possible thought?
I'm getting a lot of agreement in the comments section. And also Evan said we need to consider future growth into the proposed enrollment numbers so that we're not doing this, again, 1 year later. So maybe even pushing back will allow some of that new growth to come in and we'll have a better handle on that. But yes, everyone in the comments so far has agreed with pushing it back. They just don't want to rush an important decision, and it makes sense for gathering additional feedback. I do have one more question, and it kind of takes us a little bit back in the strategic planning, but Michael had a question. Has there been any discussion about having all the sixth graders at the middle school, returning the fifth graders to their respective elementary schools, and then changing CBIS into a sixth elementary? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, early on in the strategic plan, we did look at that. We threw out all possibilities. And I think in that journey, we talked about what does 5 through 8 look like in our district? How do you create identity, stability? And when it was all said and done through that pre-COVID era, everybody agreed they like the 5, 6, and 7, 8, as long as we can do teaming and create some relationships. And so one of the things that you're going to see from the strategic plan is that anchoring of teaming. And it's going to start off small. We're going to go in grades 5. We're going to be 2-person teams. So the kids will be able to get to know their teachers and have a little bit of movement and get to start to be a teenager and what it is to move to a different area. 6th grade, they're going to be 3-person teams, and grades 7 and 8, 4-person teams. That's what the committee, the strategic plan talked about before that. I think we all had a consensus around that. And that's where the journey's taking us at this point. So that's anyone else want to comment on it that's been part of the journey that I maybe missed something or? All right. All right. It would, yes, it would involve a remodel. That's exactly right. Okay, so the next steps then on that timeline of redistricting, we on the 27th, we're going to come back with some of the model examples that you had, but also on the 27th, we're actually going to let this committee, we're going to have this committee engaged in the first draft view of the strategic plan. All those words that you told us about, what we had dream, connect, adventure, achieve. We talked about 5 through 8 building. We talked about what it's like to have, individual student growth over the next several years. We're going to begin actually building the foundation, the layers to the strategic plan for you to see. In February, we're going to, the original plan was to have redistricting come to the board. I think what I'm hearing tonight and when I talked to Dr. Worland, Mr. Lamb and the rest of the team today about, I think August 22 is a more realistic opportunity for us to do it right than do it wrong and cause stress. So I think I'm going to Monday night ask the board if that we extend that. And then if that's the case, we're then going to shift the 27th to solidifying the strategic plan, looking at some tangible objectives and metrics for alternative education. We're going to look at our 5 through 8 modeling that we talked about. What are those career pathways that we've anchored to? So everybody can see those. Then the board would get to see those in February and March. We'd vote on them, and that would become the framework of our strategic plan. And knowing that our work's not done because redistricting is still part of our strategic plan, and going that August 22 would be where we would have that anchored. So I think I'm seeing some positives about that, Robin. Is that correct, what you're seeing?
Yes, and Allison also asked if we make the choice to postpone until 2022, would Union have a soft redistrict next year, or would everything be placed on hold?
It probably will all. I mean, if we could get a few kids there, but the problem is Doug's transportation. He can't run kids back and forth. So if mom and dad said, hey, I wouldn't mind going to Union, we'd probably allow it to happen. They got a pretty good principal out there, does some really good stuff. So, we would probably allow that. But I think for the most part, we would just keep everything intact and allow interdistrict transfers to take place like we normally do.
And Jay followed up with a question about Creekside. Do we think that their capacity can wait another year?
Based on what we see right now. Now, Mark's still big. He will tell you that. So, yes, if everything were static, but it really can't go. August 22 would have to be the deadline. We cannot continue. I will tell you that. The demographic study will be back to us by our March meeting, I think. So we'll get to see that for this committee. And Dr. Brudvig did our study in 2016, and that's who I've engaged to do our study again in 2021. So. All right. Dr. Worland, did I miss anything? I know we talked about earlier today.
No, I think we're in great shape. I just want to thank everybody for being here, for engaging us in good questions. Continue to follow up. Great conversation. Good feedback.
Yeah. Robin, I think the 27th is our date, and then February, we don't have a date yet, right? But it's going to be it's that last week of the month, whatever Wednesday or Thursday works best for everybody. Then we'll go right before spring break and then finish off in April with this group so that I can get what I'm trying to do is get the strategic task force completed. And then next year, as we gather together, it'll be continuing to talk about the metrics and looking what we need to redo and things that we need to add, things we need to solidify further. So, Robin, we'll get those dates out maybe tomorrow. Also, we'll get the mapping out for the 6 boundaries so you guys can all see that. Please share with everybody. Share our conversations today. Thank you to if people that invited other people to come and join us. This is a public session. We do have a board meeting Monday night. One of the things the Monday night, the board meeting, it will be a virtual meeting as well as an in-person meeting. Since the Johnson County is still a red, one of the caveats to being red is maximum capacity is 25 in the auditorium. So I would ask if anybody really, as we talk about the journey of what we're going to be on, if you want to put your comments in, Robin becomes really the voice of the community at the board meeting. We also realize there's a little bit of a lag as the way that the technology is set up. So please ask questions and we'll make sure the board hears that, especially as we move forward. Also, I want people to begin thinking about helping present the strategic plan. I don't want to do all the talking. You all have had input in this and it's been awesome. And so if some of the parents and community don't volunteer, you're probably going to get a call from me to say, please come help present this, because the board wants to hear from you as well, to what you liked, what you didn't like, and those things. So with that, are there any closing thoughts anybody wants to share? All right. Well, thank you on this historic night, giving up some time away from your TV and hearing what's going on in the world to sit in and really help Franklin schools get to be a better school district. I love this district. I love what we do to help kids, and we are making a world of difference. So I want to just thank everybody for doing that. Thank you, and we'll get the notes back out to you from Robin in the next couple days. The maps will be on our website, and please share those and also the timeline. With that, I'll say good night to everybody. We'll see you soon.